Is there a relationship there? How does that relationship between captain and coach work in korfball?
It's a very important relationship in terms of decision making. I think coach, if you are the head coach of a club and you are ultimately making decisions on selection, on tactics, I think making those decisions in isolation is naive. I think you should be discussing those types of decisions with somebody, because the chances are someone is going to have a different perspective and they might see things that you don't. So for me, when I was coach, when I was picking my captains, it was always, I wanted a captain, someone who I could talk to and use as a bit of a sounding board and kind of talk about ideas with and think about, what do you think about this tactic, this division, this group of players playing together, or who do you think I should be selecting as that 8th player? Or I think that relationship is really, really important in terms of decision making and tactics. On the court, it also has to be one of trust. Like I say, it's really common in korfball in Scotland where we don't have a lot of coaches that don't play. We're almost exclusively player coaches in the first division, certainly. And you need to be able to trust that. I would always try and set up so that I've got the coach at one end and the captain at the other, because I want someone who I know is going to be in charge of that group and who can, if they need to, get that division in and have a chat and say, look, this is working, this isn't, this is how we fix it. So the captain's role is really, really important if your coach is on the field as well and can't communicate necessarily. So there has to be one of trust where you could trust that the captain's going to do that.
In terms of the coach-player relationship on the pitch at the same time, the player-coach and captain-player relationship, how much should the captain defer to the coach in that role?
I think in terms of tactical decision making, they should defer entirely. In the case of if I'm thinking about, right, I've called a 1 minute timeout and I'm kind of trying to get some coaching points across
as the coach,
excuse me. I don't think the captain should be necessarily undermining that. If the captain feels differently, it's very difficult to change that within a game. If you've got a little bit longer at half time, maybe there is an opportunity. Quite often at half time, you would have a little discussion, the coach and captain, you would think, you've got a bit longer, you've got 5-10 minutes. Is there anything we can change? That's kind of a bit more of a discussion. But I think on the court or in a 1 minute timeout, there's not really time for a discussion. I would say the coach is making decisions, and it's the captain's role to kind of carry that out and make sure that the team are going with it.
So hypothetical situation, being in korfball, it's even though it's 8-a-side, it's 4v4 on a half of a pitch. The coach is in the attacking quarter, in charge of the attack. The captain is in the defensive section, in charge of that part of the game tactic, game strategy. You have, as a coach, have intentionally decided on a matchup between a defender and an opponent. The captain doesn't feel it's working, and there's been some loss of points.
Yeah,
you're down. You need to make a quick decision, and the captain changes the matchup. Is that okay?
I think so. I think you in that circumstance, if the captain has made a decision like that, you're not really as a coach, you're not really in a position to change it. If you're on the court, you're at the other end, like you say. You're not in a position to change it. Is that the right decision as the captain? If it works, maybe. If you win, if it pays off. If it doesn't, then then you've got some questions to answer, I suppose, don't you?
I suppose this beds down into long-term goals, for example, strategy. We've been in this series, we've defined strategy as the long-term goals over the course of a tournament or a season, and tactics as individual things for a one-off match, or shorter term targets. For example, winning a match. If you're trying to set out tactics which match up to a long-term strategy in terms of perhaps training a younger player or an inexperienced player and getting used to, or trying to get, for example, a short player to get used to playing against taller players, and you've decided to maybe lose a few points or lose a game every now and again, but the captain wants the short-term games to win that particular match. How do you match those two ideologies up, those two ethoses up?
It's difficult, because you of course you go into every game wanting to win the game, but I think if you have made a decision collectively, I think that kind of long-term planning does happen as a collective. If you have decided that you are willing to concede some, maybe you concede some games, you win, you lose games that you maybe could have won if you played your best 8 players for the full 45 minutes, and you've not made any substitutions, and you've not brought on any of your young players or your developing players. So that's I guess that's the kind of the scenario we're building. I think it comes down to what your kind of long-term strategy is. Is the strategy to win the league this year? And if the strategy is to win the league this year, then you do whatever you can to win every game. And if your strategy is, look, we're not sure if we're quite there this year, but maybe next year, then we think about, okay, maybe we do concede this game because we want to get our younger players a bit more time, or we want to get we want to put one of our less experienced players defending a more experienced player who's maybe going to punish them in that game and score some goals on them, but they're going to grow from that. I think it does come down to long-term planning, and if the captain has decided in that instant that winning is more important than that, then that's very difficult. It's very difficult to change. It's very difficult to change if you're player coaching. How do you deal with that? There's not really a way of making it happen. You can call a timeout and say, guys, we're going to do this, and the reason we're going to do this is because that's what we said we were going to do. And yeah, we might lose this game, but it's okay. This is why we're doing this. If everyone's clear on that kind of message, then we've got buy-in from all our players. Then I think that's all right. I think it's difficult. The situation you're describing is essentially where we don't have kind of full buy-in of our long-term goals from our senior team, which hopefully we don't find ourselves in that position.